Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MakerDAO Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting, number 148, taking place on Thursday, July 1st at 1700 UTC. My name is Lonka Wisdom. I am one of the governance facilitators at MakerDAO. I'm chairing this meeting today. I'm joined, as usual, by a bunch of awesome Maker people. And as usual, we have our agenda to get through. We have some updates from the usual suspects. I don't think we have any segments, but we're maybe going to try and spend some time discussing delegation, since there was some discussion on that last week and we had to cut it a little bit short. So yeah, I'll start with the usual preamble. We kind of do these meetings to talk to people, to hear what the community thinks, and generally, communicate. So please feel free to interrupt or ask questions or make comments. We like to answer questions and things. Cool. So with that out of the way, we'll dive into our weekly updates. I'll start with an update on governance. So we had, so first of all, the executive from 2 weeks ago is still not quite fast. There, I believe it needs 500 MKR to pass currently. So getting pretty close, but yeah, not quite enough yet. So with any luck, that'll pass either today or tomorrow, and then we'll be sort of all clear for Friday's executive. Yeah, so if you haven't voted already, consider doing so, please. We also had only one poll this week. So this was a parameter changes proposal from the MakerDAO Open Market Committee, proposing essentially a bunch of rate cuts. So that poll passed on chain, and will continue to the executive this week. This week's executive is going to have a couple of things in. So it's going to have the core unit budget payouts for July. It's going to have the aforementioned rate changes. It's going to have the debt ceiling instant access module activation for the PSM. And we might, I think, so I need to talk to protocol engineering about this, but we might put in the activation for the Flashnet module in this week's one as well. But yeah, that'll be in the copy if it goes in. So yeah, that's a brief update on where governance is at for the DAO. Also got a very brief update on the Go Alpha, the core units that I run with Peyton. So yeah, it's been a fairly productive week this week, which is nice, given that recent weeks weren't so good. So one of the highlights is, so we've been adjusting the executive and polling processes to make them more decentralized. I am, to some extent, taking credit for other people's work here. So big thanks to DUX, Derek from Protocol Engineering, and Dimitri from TechOps for helping put this together. Basically just moving some of those processes away from the foundation. They were mostly separate already, but there was some lingering bits which the foundation managed, but not for much longer, which is awesome. We also put together some initial templates for delegation. So prospective delegates can now have, there's a template for them to work on position statements. So they're kind of all working on those. We'll make them public kind of all together, so we sort of generate some sort of hype and discussion. And we'll potentially be starting kind of meet your delegate type meetings either next week or the week after. So yeah, moving forward some delegation, which is awesome. Final update from Go Alpha or highlight from Go Alpha updates is that there's a new version of the MIPs portal being pushed to production. Possibly already has been. If not, it will be in the next couple of hours. Yeah, so this is mostly thanks to Pablo from Go Alpha and DSpot, who have been working on the front end on the actual site. So yeah, thanks to both of those for awesome work. The update should bring more polish, some layout upgrades, bug fixes, and improved server infrastructure. So yeah, looking forward to seeing that go live. All right, so we'll have forum at a glance in a second as well, but are there any questions for me before we move on? looks like no. Okay, so I think Eli is going to be doing our form at a glance this week. Eli?
Thank you. Hello, guys. My name is Eli, and I'll be doing Form at a Glance. The link is in chat. You can go ahead and follow along. So first up, a 3-point summary. A record 5.4 billion DAI is in circulation. The system surplus buffer is at 47.3 million DAI, and the total value locked in Maker is $9.5 billion. Announcements, as long as already mentioned, the Open Market Committee has published a new parameter changes proposal. And we also have 2 AMA calls coming up. First one is proposing the Maker Portfolio Core Unit with Chris Cameron on July 2nd. And the second one will be Collateral Engineering with Robert Jordan on July 9th. Active discussions, we have one by Ace, who is looking for feedback on a new set of MKR vesting guidelines, as he also publishes his MKR compensation financial model. Secondly, with the number of public calls and community meetings constantly growing, Artem Gordon is asking the community which calls should be summarized in a written form. Makerman describes the interplay between trying to keep the peg, fostering decentralization, and keeping a one-to-one DAI collateral backing. And lastly, with FATF's recommendations around the corner, Jacek starts a discussion concerning Maker's policy towards regulations. On to signal requests, we have one by Alexis, who is looking to shorten the time frame of when a proposal by the parameter proposal group is put up for vote. Mariano is looking to delay the governance process on adding Pax GUSD BUSD until the community gains a better understanding of the implications. Ultra Shupi is seeking consensus on lowering the TTL parameter for flop auctions. And another one by Hexonaut, who makes an argument to fast track the G-Uni collateral. And last but not least, a prankster from New Silver seeks to increase the debt ceiling for NSDrop from 5 million to 20 million. Please go ahead and vote. That's it for me.
Great. Thank you very much, Eli. Much appreciated, as always. All right, and that brings us to a close for governance. Any questions before we move on? Comments, etc. I guess I should maybe say, like, Peyton is now officially a governance facilitator, which is awesome. Yeah, many congratulations to Peyton. We'll get him running a few of these meetings in the next few weeks, so I don't have to do it. Cool. All right. So with that, let's move on to protocol engineering. Chris.
Yeah. Hey everybody, Chris from Protocol Engineering. Congratulations, Peyton. That's much needed bus factor, although you should probably get yourself out of a car because that seems to be making some risk. You're just going to be back to long for wisdom. Wait, are you guys not moving? My star linked out.
No, you're good.
I could hear you.
Oh, okay. Peyton froze on me and it got me all messed up. All right, cool. All right, so let's see. So the Optimism DAI bridge was in final review, and so we completed that for test deployments, and we're waiting for the official launch date from Optimism. Although I believe sometime today they were going to take our deployer address and whitelist that so that we could deploy. So we've got like a loose date to possibly deploy that bridge tomorrow on Optimism. So we'll see if that works out. We still don't know what their launch date is though. So and then the D3M is complete, and but it's not immediate priority, so still requires a little bit of review. And the Sushi join adapter is complete as well, but we're waiting on the Sushi team. I think Sam had said it might be like another 3 weeks before they pick up to where they thought they were going to be. So Tal did a technical evaluation on staked F. Okay, and I think the spell just passed. Sorry, gotta stop the alert. So it looks like we're gonna get Flashman. Somebody can confirm that. That'd be great.
Yeah, looks like it passed. Sorry.
Okay, cool. And then for testing, we basically did the final like echidna and audit testing for the L2 escrow, and we've started using Certora, which is, they have like a whole tool set for formal verification. So we're starting to use that tool to see if we can like firmly verify. Oh, great, it's gonna keep happening. It's my world, sorry. All right, and then for discussions and documentation, we had the ESM postmortem, which will probably be published later this week. And then there's also, on the tail end of that, we discussed a mega poker postmortem, which is not really kind of like a system-wide postmortem. It's just that the mega poker wasn't poking a particular collateral type for a while. And so we discussed that, and we may or may not end up publishing that. We'll have to see. And there's a defined, we basically defined the expected ranges for a bunch of system variables. And if anybody has that link, that'd be great. I think it's in the wiki in the DSS repo, so we should post that. But it's basically all of the expected magnitude ranges and quantities. So everyone that is interested in that should review it. And thanks to Kurt for putting that together. And then we also had some more discussions around the sort of Oracle tail risk mitigations, which may be liquidations 2.1 or exactly how we deal with like liquidations 2.1. Again, this isn't necessarily in oracles. It's more like once we're past all of the oracles, what do we do if we ingest like a bad price? What do we want the system to do? So that's all I had on my list. If there's anyone else on the protocol engineering team that wants to mention something that I might have missed, feel free to mention it. And if there's any questions, so. Yeah, that's right, Brian. I have a lot of fun when you guys pass execs in the middle of the night, so.
I should mention we've been kind of looking heavily into this gelato token. Sam had a forum post kind of trying to expedite it. So we have been taking a look at that. So once it's live and audited and everything like that, we can move quickly.
Yeah, speaking of gelato, their team may have also put their hat in the ring to work on the sort of DSS cron, which we cycle back to that mega poker postmortem would be like, kind of, there's a lot of like little edge keepers that the foundation used to run, and there's a nice way that the protocol could incentivize the running of those keepers, and that's through like DSS cron or something to that effect. And I think Gelato might actually take a stab at trying to implement it. So.
So I think, sorry, if you're done on Gelato, Greg asked in the chat if there's a place to see, I guess, the roadmap for what Smart, sorry, for what protocol engineering are doing.
Yeah, we're using GitHub. We have Kanban board, but there's a lot of things in there that are either working with partners or other third parties that we wouldn't want to make public just yet. My original plan was to have that board fully public so everyone could see day to day, but we're not quite there yet. There was a good question that Planet X raised today, was like, okay, what's an innovation pipeline, and could that be something that that we share? And there's thoughts around that. So I think that would be something I want to take a stab at and present a broader, a longer term view of, okay, these are the things on the table. I'd like to get the day-to-day stuff to a point where we can do that as well, but I'm not quite there yet, Greg. Is there anything in particular in terms of collateral onboarding specific items or anything else that you'd want to see more visibility on?
No, I was just generally curious, like, on any given day, what can I expect next month to hit? Not that I don't like the surprise bombs in the forum, but
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I'll try to put some thought towards how I can make those week-to-week things that we work on a little bit more visible. We have planning meetings on a Monday, which gives a good overview of, okay, this is what the team is focusing on for the next couple of days, who's going to be doing writing the spell on Thursday, Friday, who's reviewing it, and some of the processes around the team. So yeah, let me give that some thought to what I can make more visible. Ideally, I'd like to take the Kanban board as it exists and extrapolate that automatically so we don't have to have multiple sources of truth. But yeah, let me give that some thought, and I'll see what we can do.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, and we do have, I mean, a backlog of governance approved technical MIPs that we're working on. I don't know if we've got a good priority list of that. We've been working with GovAlpha to kind of publish something like that. But we also need to remain like dynamic for when things pop up. If opportunities pop up, we need to be able to pivot to those too.
Okay. That does for questions. We'll move on. So let's see, we have oracles next. Nick, any updates for us?
Sure. Mostly kind of on the back end. We are, we're happy that the Oracle core unit polling vote passed pretty much unanimously. So thank you. But now is kind of when it's crunch time to get all the legal entity stuff set up, all of the, contributor kind of legal mumbo jumbo out of the way. So that's been keeping us pretty busy. On the tech front, Marc-Andre has been heading up the rollout of the new pricing tooling called Gopher that I mentioned on last week's call. So the way you structured it is that there's kind of like a phased rollout, right? Where because this is like completely new tech, we wanted to be very careful in case we saw some kind of errors in production that it wouldn't take kind of the whole Oracle network down with it. So we kind of had like a minority of stakeholders kind of upgrading, and it's been running incredibly smoothly. We've seen a bunch of price updates for Oracle updates already taking into account these new price updates from this new tooling. So we feel like we're in a comfortable spot to kind of do the remainder of the migration now. So that's ongoing. And then in the pipeline, we have the Spire upgrade, which is, hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm getting a little pop-up saying my connection's unstable. But yeah, so in the pipeline, we have Spire, right, which is this alternative kind of peer-to-peer networking type of layer. So that's going to come to that's going to be coming out shortly as well in the next couple of weeks. So we've been testing that internally for quite some time now, and that's meant to be kind of the not alternative to Scuttlebutt, but kind of like a substitute. So the two will be running in parallel. So if there's ever any issues with one of them, the Oracle feeds will just kind of just jump to the other. So yep. So we should be finishing up both of those migrations in, I don't know, probably within the next month or so. So that's going to be, I wouldn't call it, version 3.0, but it's definitely like a version 2.5 because it's much more resilient than what we had previously.
Awesome, good news. Any questions for Nick? All right, let's move on to risk. Pretty much.
Yeah. So we just published 2 collateral evaluations recently, one for StakeTit and another one for Polygon. For StakeTit, we proposed a bit lower depth ceiling of 5 million DAI. And this is because Oracle suggested us to start with a lower exposure because Oracle implementation is not that straightforward. But once we have the vault deployed and Oracle's tested, we will likely propose to increase depth ceiling to a higher value, potentially up to 50 million and more. But then again, it really depends on community appetite towards this asset, which of course has certain counterparty risks. We also propose a bit higher liquidation ratio of 160%,
because we believe that this vault might have high demand, and then if we increase the app ceiling when we do it, we'll probably have more capacity, to do such an increase of the ceiling if we have a higher liquidation ratio. And there are also still some liquidity concerns around staked ETH. Most of liquidity is incentivized by curve pools, so this was another reason why we proposed a bit higher liquidation ratio than ETH has, which has similar market risk profile. And then, as said, another evaluation was posted today for Polygon, previously known Matic. Our new team member Sean helped us make this evaluation, so really good to see team growing, and happy to have Sean on our team. The proposed parameters are pretty standard, similar as what we have for other similar market profile volatile tokens. Hopefully we see some demand. The token is also sufficiently on-chain liquid, and we can afford to increase the app ceiling, which was currently proposed to be 10 million. So yeah, we can increase it if we want without a problem here. And then there's ongoing work on D3M. This is proceeding nicely. We'll probably have the evaluation finished next week. We're spending a bit more time on to assess credit risk and liquidity risk of DAI market on Aave V2. An interesting finding so far was that DAI credit risk is actually much smaller than we thought. So to mention a few numbers that might be actually interesting for community to hear, also from the competitive standpoint. So Aave V2 DAI borrow amount, so the aggregate amount is about 1.2 billion. But then when you look at what kind of positions these are, you soon realize that these borrows are actually mostly recursive stablecoin leverage positions, which people make to maximize liquidity mining rewards. So the actual organic DAI borrow amounts are way smaller. It even surprised me. And when we say organic stablecoin borrow, that's actually stablecoin borrowing collateralized by volatile asset and not stablecoins. Okay, so this number is much smaller, amounts to only 150 million DAI. So basically, tells us only 13% of this DAI debt that we observe on Aave is actually organic and potentially unsafe if market drop, in market drop events. And that's kind of positive news from risk perspective for D3M. But it also tells us that competitors are much smaller in organic usage than that someone could observe through LTV metrics and this kind of usual stats that we see when we look at the protocol. So this was something really interesting. And then I have a few last things briefly. There's still ongoing discussion on institutional vaults. I think we're now calling them conditional vaults. Probably Nadia will talk about more about this. Basically, growth, us, and protocol engineering are looking how to make this offering available fastest by simply using the current vault parameters we have, not to make a whole MIP process that might take too long. We are also preparing some simulations to test for lower liquidation ratios for all the vaults, because there were some ideas and questions how potentially lower liquidation ratios would affect risk profile at Maker if we wanted to boost the DAI supply in such way. And then there's also a continuous work on our dashboards. I think once we finish D3M, we'll focus more on analyzing our users, meaning we'll try to get more stats about their behavior, also see how exactly all this DAI that's being minted, how is utilized. And then lastly, protocol engineering team asked us to look at DEFCON spells. Some are a bit outdated, so these are the spells that are sort of in advance prepared spells or parameter adjustments to be used if we had a major price drop or any of the system system malfunction, and we needed to react fast. And I think that's all I got for this week.
Perfect. Thanks, Primosh. Anyone have any questions for Primosh? Okay. Moving on then. Reward finance. Seb.
Yes. So for New Silver, there is a new senior request proposing to increase the debt ceiling to 20 million. So currently it's at 5 million, and they are using 16% of the vault. So they have implemented all the change that were needed in the last postmortem. They have published all the documents on the form, the operating agreements, the agreement with the independent director, the new notification system. There was an improvement in the smart contract for New Silver on the Tinlake side after the audit from DAPHub. With a new system with a link with MakerDAO. So there was some changes there. And yeah, that's it on this front. For the 4 other centrifuge collaterals that were approved by the governance last month, they were delayed due to the change in the improvement in the smart contract side. So they are pushing on Kovan, I think, next week. And so it would mean that it would be a deployment on mainnet for those new pools for in the next 2 weeks. On the SolarX front, it got a bit delayed because there was some discussion / negotiation on the risk profile maker community would like to have at the beginning. So it's a construction project, so we start to lend at the beginning due to tax issues and or some kind of other problems that we can discuss. But that means that at the beginning, they wanted to have a release of cash before they even bought the land. And then we would have no collateral, or at least just some research, but no, research are quite cheap those days. And I don't know how to sell research. So the idea is to restructure the project by having the landowner adding the land to the equity of the project. So from the start, we will have access to the equity of the land if there is any problem in this phase. And that would be more safer from our side. And I think it would be more likely to be approved by the community and governance if we do it that way. That's why we suggest them to take an extra time to find a better solution to propose to the community. And we are still making some progress on the Cayman Foundation and all the tax issue. We have a call on the tax issues with Latam and Watkins in 30 minutes. On the success front, Matthew is not here, but maybe Greg, you can brief us if there is some updates.
Yep. So yeah, sorry, Matt couldn't make it, but he asked me to give a quick update. And sorry, I have the baby right now, so pardon the cries. Things are moving slowly still, but they are moving. Still waiting for the tax ID from the IRS. It's this very strange issue where a trust cannot get a digital tax ID. You need to do it via the mail, and the IRS is very backed up right now. So we're just waiting on them. The other issue is the transfer instructions from Genesis. Those are going back and forth between the lawyers, and it seems like they'll be done in the next few days. And yeah, so after we get the transfer instructions and the, what's it called? Sorry, baby's distracting me. And the tax ID, we should be able to close. And at that point, RWA Co will put up any final risk disclosures that it sees with the structure, and hopefully Matt will petition for an executive vote to raise his debt ceiling.
Okay, great, thanks. So that close on the real world asset front. On the finance part, so AES published 2 posts, one with Long for Wisdom for the new MKR guidelines, and another one that is more on the finance front to model the impact of giving MKR reward to the core units and see what are the impacts on the profit and loss, on the balance sheet and all that. So you can play with a spreadsheet to model what you think Maker will become due to the MKR compensation. And on the data front, we made some progress there. As you know, we are using Dune Analytics a lot to publish the monthly report and all that, and some Google spreadsheets for the real world asset stuff. And it's quite painful. And so we have started to work to have a real database where every data on-chain and off-chain is dumped into. Then we can use some SQL queries to make some more elaborated models, and then use any front end to have access to the data. So that means that, for instance, I don't have the financial updated today because it will take more than 1 day to be updated. But when it will be automated, we will have the data. We will have the data every day. Yeah, so there is a GitHub for that. It's open source. It's not a production perfect. It's not the idea. The idea is to have something quite simple that we can improve and iterate on. It's not to be a separated product. We are not recreating Dune Analytics or any other system. Something that should be used to be fast and easy. And that's about it on my hand. If you have any question, happy to answer them.
Great. Seems we're good. I guess any questions for Greg about success while we're here? All right, so that brings us to Nadia with growth.
Hey everyone. Okay, let me just, okay. This is the link for the updates this week. A lot of updates this week. We have been talking with different companies that for like one reason or another requires Maker to pass through KYC process. One of these companies is of course Circle. We have been talking with them since last week about this idea that someone suggested in the forum about investing the USDC we have on the Circle Yield account. So, well, it was like a very great discussion. I read all your comments and the questions you have, and I asked them, I asked Circle about all these questions, and it was interesting because yes, definitely they require like an entity as a counterparty to sign the agreement to have access to this Circle Yield account. But like one interesting thing is that this company, it doesn't matter if it's an individual or a trust or a bank, but it has to be an accredited investor. And the KYC process is not just for the company, but they also have to understand who are the controlling partners of this company. It's also like good to know that Circle is in conversation with other DAOs, but well, and this is fascinating for me, but other DAOs, they have or a foundation or a central entity that controls the treasury. So for these other DAOs, it's more easy to decide to sign an agreement with a Circle and start using this yield account. I think we all saw what Compound is offering now. So my guess is that Compound is using Circle's yield account, and for them it's more easy than for us because we are in this process of complete decentralization. So it's more difficult. We also talked with Galaxy, big fans of Maker holders actually, and they like the idea about using Maker vaults, but then again, the problem about KYC. They have to KYC us, and we don't have any entity. Maker protocol is not an entity, so they wouldn't be able to use Maker vaults. So after like seeing all these opportunities that we have right now, we decided to ask to our legal advisor to work on this and have his point of view. He will like explain us the risks, the options we have as MakerDAO to understand what could be next step. This is also interesting. I know Paper Imperium, he is working on a proposal to start investing make the Maker protocol assets into TradeFi. So I think we can like work together and find out what are like the options we have for this. Another news, the PSM delayed. Thank you everyone for supporting this. We are talking with Paxos, we are talking with Binance. We have to talk with Gemini. We haven't done that yet, but it is interesting. And I think we have to know that including stable coins in the PSM is like a negotiation tool for us. Like it's something others want. So in the case of Binance, they are super excited about being included in the PSM. They want to like showcase DAI as one of the top 10 use cases for BUSD with DAI. And they also want to engage their community about using this BUSD/DAI integration. So this is great. And I think my team thinks that we can like ask them for more things in return of asking, like having this proposal about including them in the PSM. So I think it's good to know what other projects could like give the Maker protocol in return for being added to the PSM. I didn't include it in here because I forgot, but we will also be working with all the projects that probably we will offboard. So our plan is to talk with these projects, for example, Decentraland, to talk with them about Mana and ask them why they are not using the Vault. And I think this is good because it's good to understand why other projects, treasuries or foundations or DAOs are not using Maker Vaults to get liquidity. Like fun fact, we discovered that Decentraland is paying salaries in DAI. So like we don't understand why they are not using the Maker Vaults. So we want to like talk with them, explain them the situation, and ask them if they want, of course, and try to convince them to open a vault and use the remaining debt ceiling that they have available. So we will give them 30 days to do that. And I think that that's also something that we could use as an input to make the decision about offboarding them in the future. Well, start of the week, it's BlockFi. BlockFi, for the ones who can open an account in BlockFi, I know it's not available in all countries, but I know for sure that a lot of Latin, Asia, and of course North American countries can open an account in BlockFi. They will be giving an 8.5% yield in DAI. So this is very cool, and this is also a reminder that it will be great if we could like have the DSR alive. I don't know if you have seen, but Coinbase is also launching this yield with USDC, of course, powered by Circle. And we have seen a lot of fintechs and neobanks very interested in USDC just because they will have access to this extra yield. So something to consider when we discuss about the future of DSR. And well, last week we launched our Twitter account. This is the tweet of the week. It is like, we thought it's amazing that a Polygon team is telling everyone that they really want Matic to be used as collateral, and they want it so bad that they will open a vault of $50 million worth in Matic as soon as Matic is onboarded in the Maker protocol. So yes, that was all for this week. Any questions?
Nadia, the deal with Matic where we do this is basically them monetizing their treasury. And I'm wondering, isn't this effectively the same thing that we did with YFI, or that YFI wanted to do? Is there, and anyone can answer this, is there any major difference between the two situations? Because I know MKR holders didn't vote for YFI to do this. I'm just wondering if that appetite has changed, if they should resubmit, what the story is.
It's maybe worth mentioning Wi-Fi are doing it in Wi-Fi A. They just kind of wanted B to be with like more favorable rates, I think.
Yeah, I think it's also the debt ceiling. I think that the problem was the debt ceiling Wi-Fi wanted to have, but I'm totally in favor of Wi-Fi's proposal. I think that we should consider be the bank for DeFi treasuries, but I know that has like its own risk associated. But I think that if it's not, if they don't have Maker, they will like look for other options. And I'm seeing UMA offering to be the bank to these DeFi treasuries. So I mean, there's like a clear opportunity. We have to decide if we want to take it or others will take it for us. Yeah, risk reward as always, exactly. By the way, in that line, Jen is also working with Gnosis because Maker vaults were not integrated in Gnosis, and everyone is using their multisig. Every DAO is using their multisig, so now it will be easier for DAOs to open a vault if they are using a multisig that everyone uses it. So that's also a good news for like position ourselves as the bank of the DAOs.
Yeah, who's working with Gnosis, did you say?
Oh, Jen of my team.
Oh, Jen, yeah,
Jennifer. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
All right, so are there any questions for Nadia before we move on?
I think sorry, Long. I think Mati is kind of different because they weren't as collateral in the protocol, and they just want to be onboarded. They are like telling Maker holders that if Matic is included, they will use the vault, and I think that's also a good. It's good to know that if we are going to pass through all the effort of including a new collateral in the protocol, it's good to know that someone will use it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. All right, let's maybe move on and go through our most of our updates. Cool, so I think that brings us to SES, Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling. Juan?
Everyone, this is Juan from SES, or Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, so let's jump quickly into our updates. So the first news, it's that the MKR compensation passed, so the team is very, very happy about that, and we would like to thank everyone that voted. Yeah, hopefully this paves the way for new core units that are considering joining Maker, and it helps scale the system in that way. Then we already mentioned the potential budget modification, so we might write something for next week before the RFC deadline. And regarding the internal projects, we had Nikolai last week explaining Project Sandbox during the SCS weekly meeting. So that's already in the public video folder, and we'll have Lenka tomorrow explaining Project X-Ray. So for everyone that wants to know more about this, please join us at 2:30 p.m. UTC. Regarding other news, I don't think you commented much on this, Nadia, and maybe you want to, but I know that Lenka is collaborating a lot with Nadia and other people for the side event in ECC. So there's something happening there, more details coming soon. And also Link is going to be presenting SES and Maker in the Daoist on July 23rd. Regarding the DAI Foundation and potential MIPs, we'll have more news next week. And yeah, there's our incubes are live. So as always, reach for help if you would like help with the talent. And yeah, everyone heard about the DAX core unit now, so I won't mention that again. Regarding the public calls, we had Amazix yesterday explaining their marketing core unit. I think the video is already up, so if you missed it, feel free to go and see what they're proposing. They have a new reviewed proposal. So it was quite an interesting conversation. And we are preparing LexMaker, the second series with the layer 0. There's an auction demo keeper with Petru and Nikolai coming soon. And then there's also Andy that's preparing the second session for the core unit rituals. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And yeah, if there are no questions, these are our contact details in case someone wants to reach out.
Great, thank you, Juan. Maybe it's possible just for me and maybe anyone else who's kind of forgotten. Could you remind us briefly like what sort of Project X-Ray and projects the other one actually are in practice?
Yeah, the names are not ideal, but so the idea is so maybe I should I don't know how much, right? Not much, but the dog food one is to set up your own core unit. So any documentation that will help any stranger to set up the core unit. Sandbox is to design and improve architecture for the Maker protocol that enables mainly parallel smart contract development. X-Ray is about talent onboarding funnel, so recruiting and yeah, anything that will improve this as a DAO.
Perfect, thank you. That's everything I wanted. All right, if there's no questions for Juan, what other questions for Juan? We can move on. All right, so that brings us to MIPS. David, are you prepared to give a MIPS update?
Yeah, here, let me share my screen. Oh geez, sorry, just a moment. All right, cool. Yeah, right on. Happy, what is it now? It is July, right? Yeah, so one sec. All right, yeah, welcome to the weekly MIPS update. I'm David. Hi. So yeah, we just concluded our June governance cycle. So we had a bunch of positive results. Nothing failed our governance cycle. So we successfully passed DSS Fest, pros for the governance facilitator role, the 4 different budget modifications, which included the SES MKR compensation package, and also the Oracle's core unit. So huge congratulations to everybody on the results from last month. But now we are entering into a new month. And so here's a quick snapshot of what the month is going to look like. Currently, we're in a gap week, so there is nothing MIPS related happening at the moment. But starting Monday the 5th through Wednesday the 7th, we're going to have our usual formal submission period with a submission review happening that Thursday. And then after that, it's going to be individual ratification polls for every individual MIP, subproposal, and MIP set that's going to be submitted. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to this coming month's submissions. In terms of MIPs eligible for formal submission, we actually have quite a lot. We have the MIP 55 Special Purpose Fund, which is a fund for fulfilling a narrow, specific, or temporary objective. Any core unit can use it pretty much as a tool in its back pocket. We also have Greg DePrisco's MIP 52, which is a dispute resolution process, which actually involves putting up $10,000 DAI worth of MKR at the date of the dispute, and kind of bringing it to MKR holders on chain. But yeah, definitely check that out. And also a couple of budget modifications are eligible. We also have a number of core units eligible. So governance comms is eligible, strategic marcoms is eligible, collateral engineering services is eligible, as well as Amazix, and also strategic happiness. So all of these I've covered the details of in the previous week's updates. So feel free to check out the previous slides if you want the details. Actually, here, let me go back really quickly and give like a second if anybody wants to screenshot these. All right, so beyond that, the remaining proposals in RFC there are only actually two. So there's the set of proposals for the Maker Portfolio Core Unit, which is actually a brand new core unit being proposed by Chris by Paper Imperium. And it is a one team member sized $335,000 per year core unit, and its purpose is to pretty much be like representative of the DAO in more like formal deals. But yeah, I'll let Paper speak to that perhaps later in the call or in a separate call. And then we also have the updated declaration of intent from B Protocol, and they are asking for Maker governance to stand with them and declare our intention to experiment with a native integration with their V2 protocol. So yeah, that's about it for the MIPS update. Yeah, it's a gap week, so nothing crazy happening. Looking forward to everybody's submissions this coming week. So feel free to shoot me a question if you have any.
Perfect. Thank you, David. So I have belatedly remembered that I'm supposed to be doing the governance cycle review this week, which I neglected to add to the agenda.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's like a weird situation where week 4, like this call is actually July, but really it's like we're considering it like week 4 of June.
Yeah, I guess it is. Maybe we should have done it last week. Anyway, regardless. Yeah, so I mean, I won't sort of spend too much time on this unless people want to talk about it, but we kind of saw the new governance cycle in operation for the first time. So we got to kind of observe the differences between it and the previous. Like we didn't have anything fail, which is a good sign. Like it was like the sort of 10K like default maker was kind of there was no sort of technical like analysis or sort of decision of like why that would be a good minimum amount. It was just kind of a ballpark number. So it's good to see that we sort of did meet that. So maybe one comment to make is that we did see some of the proposals stay below the 10K kind of threshold for some time. I think some of them went quite late before they got voted through. Which is not entirely unexpected. Like I kind of did expect some people to sort of vote near the end, whereas some seem to sort of consistently vote near the beginning. Yeah, so DSS West and I think SES were the two that sort of went quite late. DSS went later, I think. So yeah, not sure sort of how to pass that at this point, right? Like I don't think it's a problem. Like I think it's good that we saw everything pass. And yeah, if we as we continue, I guess we'll see if we have any issues with the new version. But sort of, I'm feeling fairly like it feels fairly promising at this point, right? Like it's made a couple of things easier. We had sort of participation. Yeah, so if anyone has any comments, feel free to make them. But yeah.
Here's a comment. I love that we don't have to make a whole spell on a Monday and jeopardize the hat. So loving the new process so far.
Yeah, that is nice for a couple of reasons. Yep. So like the one, I guess not downside, the one sort of separation thing is that like So to be fair, we didn't often do this, but like previously with the old cycle, we had the chance to actually implement the thing in the same vote that kind of confirmed it, right? Like if the DSSS vote had been in an executive, then we could have, I guess, permissioned the DSSS vest in that executive. So it is now separate now that now that polls are separate from now that the sort of final monthly vote doesn't take place in executive. It means that the stuff that is voted in the monthly then also needs to go into the weekly cycle, right, to go through if it has like technical on-chain changes. So there are some downsides, but I think on balance, as Chris said, it's seems to be better this way for the time being. Yeah, so Brian mentioned delegation, and I think, yeah, I think that will sort of shift a lot of things in the community. I think potentially it will I think potentially delegation would have made the previous monthly cycle much more smooth as well. So it's possible if we sort of develop issues with the new one, we might go back once we have delegation. But like only if we observe issues, right? Like if it's working for everyone, then we'll stick with it. Anyway, so we do plan to discuss delegation, but I think Nadia wanted to cover something quickly before we moved on.
Yes. About what Juan said, we are planning between like all the core units and different members of the community a side event in Paris during IPCC. It will be the 21th. We are defining the venue and all of that, and we want to have some sort of panel where different core units will talk about what they are doing and all of that. And we would love to have someone from the community also in the panel. So if you are going to be in Paris for the event, let me know, and it will be great to include you in the panel. Also, we have a Telegram group, and the same thing. If you are going to be in Paris during the event, let me know to include you in the Telegram group, because we really want to like hang out with you guys and know everyone from the community.
Yeah, I know there's definitely a few core units members who are going to that. So yeah, please do. I guess get in touch if you're in the area. Okay, if that covers that, yeah, we're on the hours. We've got some time left. So I guess bringing us back to delegation, right? We spoke a little bit about this last week. There was kind of some sort of spirited discussion that took place near the end of the meeting. So if anybody wants like sort of to discuss anything specific about delegation, now is maybe a good time. I think the main kind of discussion point last week was on whether the sort of mandated actors should be delegates essentially. So I guess if anyone has strong feelings about that in any direction, please feel free. Do you have some strong feelings, Joe? Maybe not. So I guess I'll kind of state my position as it is, right? And people can argue. So I think on balance, like my current position is that I kind of like the fact that there's almost a separation of powers between mandated actors versus maker holders currently, right? Not like, you know, it's not like sort of a clean separation because there obviously are overlaps. And that was like potentially if delegates are still not mandated actors, then that will continue, right? Like there'll be a kind of a give and take between the delegates and the mandated actors, which should hopefully keep like both sides somewhat in check. So I think, but so allowing like those two powers to kind of combine in one entity, you kind of lose that give and take a little bit anyway, which I don't think would be ideal. So that's kind of one point. On the other hand, it's kind of very difficult to stop anyone from being a delegate because it's entirely permissionless. So given that, you know, there's nothing stopping a core unit or mandated actor becoming a delegate like on the sly, right? It's probably better that they do it publicly if they do it at all, which means like sort of not publicly forbidding it. So I guess so a couple of others have sort of suggested like sort of saying, they're now sort of implementing a sort of draconian policy of saying like, if a mandated actor is caught being a delegate, then you sort of dismiss them as a mandated actor, which is possible. I think it's a bit heavy-handed. Like I think it's unlikely to actually work well in practice, especially since like in order to sort of offboard someone, you need to make a vote, which the mandated actor will be a delegate, so they'll have like a weight in that vote. It all gets a bit complicated, but yeah. So I'm curious if anyone has sort of strong feelings on either side of this issue. I think is Marta here today? Marta was maybe
not. Can I say something?
Yeah, go for
it. I'm kind of divided on this. In some ways, it would be a great advantage to have them as delegates. Because you would, if there's a discussion, you could get answers straight away. And that would be a huge plus. On the other hand, part of the scope of the delegators, it's going to be more or less a little bit of a boardroom, and the performance of mandated actors and their core units is going to be essential. It's going to be an essential task of the delegators, and with regards to that, it's better if they're not delegators. But if that, I don't know. Anyone else has an opinion?
I know my thought is that ideally, and just my personal perspective is ideally, facilitators like myself shouldn't be mandated actors because we already have quite a lot of centralized control in the team itself. Protocol engineering is working on the protocol. We shouldn't be voting on things that we're putting forward. I think there needs to be broader discussion with a broader community. Of course, many people are anonymous, so you can't be strict about that. But I think having a broader discussion group, like with yourself, Planet X, that is not part of a core unit, is a healthy dynamic to have. And I welcome that discourse and discussion that will come from others who are not part of core teams, and will have inevitably counter views to what the different teams will have. So yeah, I'm leaning towards facilitators not being delegates, even though you can't enforce that strictly.
I think the enforcement angle here is a little bit irrelevant. I think there's a lot of stuff, and even just like regular governments, that's kind of done on a gentleman's agreement type of basis. And so if we collectively as a community agree that, okay, this shouldn't happen, I don't think you're going to see a lot of people, cross that line.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. Like I think so one thing I kind of considered as well is if you have a situation where like some of the mandated actors want to be delegates and think that's fine, and others very much don't, then you end up with a situation of like the sort of voting power leaning towards certain like certain domains, right? Like not smart contracts in this instance, but like towards a different domain, which I think could be problematic. Like it would maybe be less bad if like all of the core unit facilitators had like some vote weights, because then they could kind of balance each other. But I'm kind of worried if it all sort of congregates on certain core units, then that could be negative, maybe. I don't know.
Let's say, for instance, that in terms of like crypto, Twitter, popular culture, one core unit is very popular. So let's use PE as an example, right? Let's glorify the devs who are building the core of the protocol, right? So, and everyone delegates to the PE team, and now you have kind of the situation where that Mooney just kind of posted, right, where he's taking on the liability of both like writing the bug and then voting it into the protocol, and that's kind of maybe a little more funny way to look at it. The way I kind of see it is that you devolve into the kind of situation that Bitcoin finds itself in, where the devs have basically taken over control of the protocol, right? Where if they can basically kill something if they don't like it, or they can get something in if they do, and that worries me. I don't want us to be in that type of situation, right? Devs should definitely write the code, but they shouldn't really have an influence on whether it makes it into the protocol or not.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point of view. Avoiding any potentially problematic tribal comments at this stage. So I guess I'm curious if anyone's taking the opposite view, right? Because I know like Wouter was last week. I guess does anyone else hold the same view, right? That the managed actors should be delegates? Because we've heard quite a lot from one side, I guess, so far.
I like Nick's point of view, but at the same time, I don't want to like build or impose any rules, even if we can enforce them. I think that, I don't know, what I feel is that MKR holders will delegate to whomever they want, and it's better to do it in a, I don't know, quote unquote legal way. So allow for it if needed, and all the conflict of interest being declared, compared to some random wallet showing up and it's like, oh, who's this? Okay, they got a bunch of delegation. We don't know who it is. It might be a mandated actor, maybe it's not. And not being able to interact with that person, I think it might have worse ramifications. But I share a lot of the points that Nick raised. So I'm on the fence for this one.
Yeah, so a lot of people bring up the enforcement point again, and yeah, I agree. Like, I think, if we did conclude that we didn't think managed actors being delegates was a good idea, like, as part of like GovAlpha's responsibilities, I'm planning to write a sort of like, like what should you consider as an MKR holder when you delegate, right? And this would be sort of one of the sort of recommendations that we put in there. I think would be that, like, on balance, we don't think managed actors make the most sense as kind of targets for delegation. Yeah, it says people to delegate your maker to for the reasons that we've discussed, right? Obviously that doesn't stop anyone doing it, but it sort of at least kind of allows people to consider the potential issues before they do, right? Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
But if we know, like, facilitators or core units shouldn't be delegators, why don't we create a rule? I understand we can't enforce it, but we could like ask maker holders if like explaining them why we think it's not a good idea, and ask them if they think the same or not, and like create rules about who could be a delegator. Because if not, like, I understand that we all agree now that we don't want that to happen, but if it's not a rule, like, it could happen in the future. So why don't we create a clear framework for everyone? And if you want to be a delegator and you are part of a core unit, well, you can always quit your core unit and become a delegator. But if we have clear rules for everyone, I think it's much better than assume that we all agree in a social in this social agreement that we shouldn't have facilitators or core units as delegators.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair point. I kind of bring up the point that sort of any rule that we make can be unmade, right? So it's kind of very much the social layer that is enforcing, or that can enforce it, right? So if the social layer develops into a group that feels that mandated actors should be delegates, right? Then they're just going to unmake the rule that says that that managed directors can't be delegates, right? Like, because they'll have, you know, in theory, the social layer is the MPR holders at this stage, right? So, you know, if that social consensus changes, then the rules will be changed. So there's no way to like, there's no way we can make a rule that like, that sort of binds future, like the future community and the future MKR holders to the current, to like our current recommendations, right? Like maybe it would be good if we could do that, but like, yeah.
I wanted to say something. So Nadia said that we all agree that they should not, and I don't agree with that statement. I don't think they should, but I also don't think they should not. So I'm like neutral on that one. I do agree that a concentration of power is dangerous at any point in the process, but this does not stops in this stage, right? So I'm talking about the whole ecosystem. But yeah, I think Brian mentioned it on the chat that at the end it has to do with the delegators. If the MPR holders see that a delegate might be getting too much power, they might want to remove that or switch it to another delegate. So eventually, I think that it would level out, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like, I think it's also important to note that the risks of like over centralization exist without this, right? Which I think is what people are saying in the sidebar. You know, like there's nothing stopping like sort of one delegate who isn't a mandated actor getting like, you know, a huge amount of MKR delegated to them to the point where they essentially control the protocol, right? And there's no way we can like just like sort of adjudicate that, say that can't happen, right? It's up to MKR holders. So yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think it's probably like as I don't think we actually can enforce it, Nadia, unfortunately, as much as some of us may want to, right? I think that's, so there's actually another wrinkle to this as well, which is that like a lot of the initial delegates are people who have like contributed to core units in the past at the very least, right? So the other sort of negative result of this is if we say like we don't want mandated actors or people with connections to core units to be delegates, then we potentially lose like sort of several of the people who have like already expressed interest in being a delegate, right? So
like I don't see a problem if you were like a past core unit, you know, facilitator or contributor that you're a delegate. It's only if the two overlap at the current point in time. Like if anything, it's probably very helpful to have a delegator who used to be a facilitator and is now, you know, like on the other side.
Yeah, I think it can be like, so I think paper and pyramid is something that's sidebar, and like no matter what you do, it kind of enables the possibility for more corruption, right? For like corruption when you do delegates, like with the trade-off being you get hopefully more effective governance. Like you know, and an example of corruption that in the sort of situation you just mentioned, Nick, is that you sort of, you know, in sort of traditional governments, you sort of always hear like, oh, you know, like someone who was a minister then became like some executive of some multinational corporation that like that funded like you know, that was like lobbying for like certain decisions in government, right? And potentially vice versa, right? You could have you know, the mandated actor who sort of steps down with the express purpose of becoming a delegate and pushing like the agenda that the next, or like their successor is going to push, right? So
I mean, I agree in principle, but if we're dealing with those, if we're dealing with those types of problems, we've already made it. Like,
yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have like.
I feel like in the short term, there's much more bigger and relevant problems to deal with that delegation can solve, and that this split between facilitators and or core unit members and delegators solves. That those like long tail problems, like, I mean, if we've made it to there, like we have a whole different set of problems to worry about.
Yeah, I largely agree. I guess I was just trying to make the point that like, yeah, no system is going to be perfect, right? But like, yeah, I think I agree with you. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think that was a positive discussion. Hopefully, those involved agree. yeah, well, as I said, we'll sort of post something as Go Alpha that sort of kind of explains our point of view, right, and like our recommendations to MKR holders when delegating, which will kind of cover this. You know, and obviously, if anybody does want to try and like sort of submit a MIP or write a MIP that sort of says like, you know, that does try and kind of enforce certain rules for delegates, that's also something anyone can do, right? Like, so yeah, very much kind of an open question still at this point.
Sorry, Long, just to clarify, is it about being a delegate or being a recognized delegate? Because we essentially cannot, or is this going to be some kind of whitelisted thing in the end? Because if somebody wants to be a delegate and he cannot because of some strange MIP law we put up at some random point of time, then they will just create a second account being unrecognized and just tell their friends and being a delegate this way. Actually, yeah. I don't think we need to worry too much about the whole topic. I mean, right now we have something like, I don't know, 7 to 10% of the shares being in active voting. How bad can it be in the future if we have delegation? It will just be better and it will sort out naturally, I think.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, I don't think this is like a, you know, make or break problem, right? Like, I don't think this is something that we need to get right initially. Like, if there even is like a right answer, which I'm not sure there is. And I agree. I think I'm leaning towards like, you know, the reality is there is no way to enforce this. And if people are going to do it, then I would rather they did it publicly, so people can like kind of keep track of them as well. So yeah.
I still think we shouldn't let the enforceability of this dissuade us from just deciding as a community that we don't like this. I think the social signaling is more than kind of strong enough as an enforcement mechanism, at least at first. Like if you're Anon, like great, like, but you're gonna have a hard time kind of pulling in big bags of Maker because you can't use your identity, right, as your brand to attract the MKR as a delegate.
No, but let's say one of the VCs is really fond of Derek and saying, hey, Derek, it would be really cool if you could be a delegate. And Derek would say, sorry, I cannot do. And then they bribe him and he creates a second account, totally Anon, nobody knows about it, just the VC. This works totally. So why are we trying to prevent this?
I agree that that's possible.
You're not getting bribed, Derek. It was just making it up. This was, sorry.
I agree that it's possible, but I think the social layer consensus is a lot stronger than people give it credit for. Like a lot of things in government that we have are really just kind of traditions and social consensus. They're not actually codified into law or anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. And some of those traditions hold fairly strongly, but we've also seen examples recently where like those traditions have been broken to like limited recourse for anyone. So yeah, I mean, I do see your point. Like, I do think the social consensus is pretty strong. And like, if someone does want to, as I said, if someone does want to actually write a MIP that says like, these are the rules for delegates that everyone agrees on, you know, we can do that. We can vote on it, right? But yeah, I don't think it's critical for to start with. I think I agree with.
But if MKR holders don't like the idea of core unit facilitators being delegates, then they just won't delegate to this person. There is no need to come up with some kind of social consensus. I mean, should this work? Somebody is going to write a MIP saying we don't like that, and then we have this MIP in the voting portal. Is that the way to go?
All it'll be is a social agreement. You can never have more than that.
Yeah, but I mean, code is law, right? So if people don't like the social agreement, then they will act otherwise because it's possible to do. And they will find the bribable Derek out there.
I think we're over.
Let's get rid of all the Dereks. It's fine.
Just sticking to the story.
Like the only way that works is if the person is anonymous, right? Because if they're a core unit facilitator or contributor or whatever, and then they're a public delegator, then the next step really is for governance just to like vote that person out of their position, right? And then it becomes the code is law enforcement of the social values that we've agreed on, right? Like we're just literally just talking about this edge case of like someone is anon and kind of doxes themselves to certain people to get their MKR delegated to them. And I think that edge case is possible, but I don't think it invalidates the rest of the benefit that we get in all other cases except for that specific edge case.
I mean, the potential flip side to that is that, like, you know, if you don't force people to do it anon, then they'll do it publicly and you can keep better track of what they're doing, right? Like, that's the kind of counter argument, right? Like, if you know, if you do say, you know, we don't recommend it, but like, we would rather it was public than private, then, you know, potentially they'll be public and it's easier to then track like any conflicts of interest, any potential like sketchiness or whatever, right?
The Yakuza model in Japan, how did that work out for them?
I'll admit my Japanese history is not perhaps as highly known as yours. Like, could you elaborate?
TLDR, it didn't.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, so yeah, I don't think, as I said, I don't think we're going to be able to decide on something beforehand, because we're hoping to launch fairly soon. I do think if anyone is like deeply concerned about it and does think we should try and enforce it, then MIP will be the way to go. And I'm happy to like help review any MIP that anyone wants to write along those lines, right? Cool. All right, we are reaching the end of our allotted time. Does anyone have any final points or anything before we wrap up?
Flashmint.
Yeah, let's focus on the positive. We got the Flashmint module. That's good. Awesome. All right, cool. Let's leave it there. Thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, we'll talk to you all next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.